Hello, everyone, and welcome to Allianz Joy today. I am glad you're watching this episode. Very glad to have you here. And if you're watching the replay, please let us know and put something in the comments that you enjoyed this show and this episode of Allianz Joy. I'm going to share some really interesting, great joy with you today. I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Dominika Staniewicz, and Dr. D, or Coach D, as she goes by, has a tremendous and wonderful resume. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Coach D, Dominika, is a brain coach and elite neuro encoding specialist. And she combines holistic life coaching with a blend of factual research, and is licensed by Dr. Amen from the Amen University and renowned neuropsychiatrist. Hard to talk today, a founder member of the Neuro Encoding Institute, founded by Joseph McClendon. Do I say that right? McClendon.
Yep.
So we are in for a very, very good conversation today. Dr. D's coaching approach is unique, as she said, like I said, blend knowledge about the brain with emotional support of a life coach. And that is very important. I love what you say in your resume. You assassinate anxiety, depression, fear of failure, fear of rejection, self-doubt, loathing, imposter syndrome. We all know about that. Anger management, procrastination, and of course, how many times do we feel that we are not enough? So we definitely need you in our lives. And I want to introduce you today. Thank you so much for coming on my show. We're going to talk later at the end about where we can find you and what to do to get you on our list here, on our personal list. Tell me a little bit about yourself and where you are. Thank you so much.
Well, hello, Ellen, and thank you for having me. And to everybody that's listening, I'm very grateful that you're giving me your time to listen to what I have to share. And I hope that brings value to you, because that's the reason I get on shows, to bring you guys value, maybe other tools that you have not heard of. So what I do is a very specific and rare type of a blend. I use neuroscience, neuropsychology, and the knowledge from Dr. Amen, who is a world-class neuropsychiatrist, who believes that before we go on medication, we got to try absolutely everything possible from the natural resources, including starting from food, ending on rewiring and rewiring your brain using the neuropathways, promoting different types of behaviors that are connected to your body and your gut. And that's all based in science and medicine. The beautiful thing about what I do is that I embrace the natural methods as well as the modern medicine. I believe in both, and there is place for both. And if what I'm doing is not working, I will definitely send you on your way to a doctor. What's also very rare when it comes to brain coaching, and I'm a brain coach and a neuroencoding specialist, is that I look at your blood work. See, very often we get a feeling that we're depressed, we get a feeling that we're anxious, we get heart palpitations, but your blood work is off, and you might be in the norm, but you might not be in the optimum. And certain things were taught to brain coaches by Dr. Amen. The certain blood work we look at, we do not diagnose, but we do look at it to know if you're in the optimum range. And if you're not, guess what? I'm not going to, treat you because I'm not a doctor. I'm going to send you to a doctor so you can level that out. And a few times it happened to me that when I had my clients the preliminary blood work, it turned out that they were missing certain elements in their blood. And when they fixed that with supplements and food and certain activities, they really didn't need me, because it turned out that they were not depressed and they were not having anxiety. It was just their body was not functioning correctly. So that's the first thing that makes us so different. I think what's amazing is that we use our natural behaviors and our patterns of growth and how your brain has developed. We analyze and we take into consideration different parts of your brain. So we don't treat you per se. We work with your brain as an organ. It's like when there's something wrong with your heart, you don't go, oh, there's something wrong with me. No, my heart is having a problem. And the same thing with you, with all those feelings that you've mentioned at the beginning. That is a brain And the brain is an organ. It's a tissue that absorbs 20% of your calories a day and 20% of your energy. It is absolutely the most complex organ in the universe. And what's beautiful about Dr. Amen, if you guys have not run into him, absolutely please check him out, is that he believes that you got to look at the organ before you treat it. So as a psychiatrist, he was the revolutionary who brought brain scans, SPECT scans into psychiatry. And because of him, for example, we know that there are 7 types of ADHD. And very often when we scan the brain, it turns out that you don't have ADHD. It's just patterns of behaviors that can be managed with food, and behavioral patterns change and other things that we do as brain coaches. So I think the beauty of what I do and how I can help you is that it is, I wouldn't say at the cellular level, that's an overstatement, but it is much more than just psychology. Joseph McClendon III, he's the head coach and head trainer for Tony Robbins, all trainers and coaches. Yes. And he's my mentor as well. And he is the one who created Neuro Encoding Institute, where we rewire your brain using your body, behaviors, thoughts, beliefs, and everything else. So it works beautifully, scientifically also, you know, in providing services that very often are prolonged. I have found that when we use these techniques, most of my clients are gone within 6 months, not because there's something wrong with them, but because they don't need me. And that's the biggest gratitude I can have. You know, my probably favorite client was a young lady. She was 32 and she was about to be put on medication for anxiety, and she didn't want to take medication. And I'm like, are you okay to try? She goes, I really want to try not to go on medication. She was very determined. And her anxiety was to a point where she was going into a room full of people. She would have heart palpitations, either faint or throw up, that bad. So she couldn't really attend any events, meet people because of the social anxiety. Within 4 weeks, we've managed to get her to the point where she was in a room and not fainting and not throwing up. She wasn't talking to people yet. But within 2 months, she texted me, and I have that text, and every time I have doubts about what I'm doing, I look at that, and she texted, Dominika, I spoke with 6 people. It was awesome. It was so easy. And, you know, within about 4.5 months, she moved on her merry way because the main problem was solved. There was no need for medication. Now, she was on supplements from Dr. Amen, and there were some other things she was doing, but none of them required chemical medication. And this is my disclaimer. There is time and place for medication. So if you guys are on medications, please do not take yourself off of it. Please make sure you're under care of a doctor, whoever prescribed them, and then have somebody like me, for example, a brain coach, work with your doctor so we can take you off if possible. If you're like me and you have epilepsy, I'm sorry, but no brain coaching is going to help me. I do need medication, and we're going to embrace that medication. Because of that, I don't have seizures, right? So there's time and place for everything. And what I love about what I do is that you guys don't need me within 6 months, and you can go live your best life, whatever that best life is for you.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for explaining that. I have several questions that are coming out of your introduction. And of course, I love what you do because I believe the same. I'm not taking anybody just off medication, but I believe that we are very, very competent of self-healing in a variety of ways. And let's go back to the neuroencoding, Dr. Amen, that he, and the development of Joseph McClendon III, you said, and what they have done for that, because there's much more talk about us having this knowledge about the process of our thinking and you know, our brain being an organ, yes, but that's something different than our mindset, right? And a lot of people tend to
absolutely
see that as the same, right? They're like, well, I'm just tired, it's my brain. But the brain is just an organ, as you so very well explained, and our thinking is something that affects that organ as well, right? So it's just like sometimes, and I would go back a little bit to my somatic healing process, where I was taught by Dr. Peter Levine that it is a thinking that affects our body as well, right? Sometimes we have intestinal problems because we are just so stuck in our past, or maybe we're dealing with trauma, maybe we're dealing with PTSD.
So that is
a little
very
bit about
true.
that.
That is very true. So your thought is actually an electrical impulse that connects different parts of your brain, that wires them together in those neuropathways. And how it works is that up to age of 25, our neuroplasticity is absolutely amazing. Anything you get exposed to creates a neuropathway. And if you don't get exposed to it, those neuropathways are, let's say, swept away. Now, when you keep having similar experiences, you go, first of all, go to YouTube and put in neurons connecting. You'll see a beautiful video under a microscope where two neurons go together and they connect. And that's the first exposure under 25. And after we turn, 25, some people 28, let's just say 25 for the sake of a conversation, because there are different studies, 25, 28, depending on your gender. Then we have to choose and tell our brain, say, this is important, I want to change that. And you need to concentrate on that change. Before the age of 25, it happens naturally. Any exposure creates a neuropathway. So every time you repeat it, first it's like thin as a hair. Then you repeat it again, it becomes a ribbon, that experience. Then it becomes a sidewalk. Then it becomes a one-way road. Then it becomes a two-way road. Then it becomes a freeway, and then it becomes a highway. And when it becomes a highway, it becomes your habit, because your brain wants to preserve energy. And every time you have a thought, not only those neuropathways get stronger or weaker, you also release chemicals into your body that give you the feeling. So the feeling is not just something magical. It's actually release of certain hormones and certain chemicals into your body. Now, because we're conscious humans, there's part of our head that happens, and everything happens consciously. But how I talk, how I move my hands, or how I pick up a cup, I don't go, okay, I want to pick up a cup. Extend your arm, move, grab the cup, move it closer. I don't process. It happens automatically because our brain wants to preserve energy. With that being said, 90% of your behaviors are patterns. 90% of your behaviors are habits that your brain, repetitive, and you don't think about it. So what if, just what if you could interrupt that pattern and do things differently? Your brain then brings attention, goes, that was different. Did I like it or didn't I like it? And that's where we go into the, other part of our brain, which is the reward system. And if we know how to stimulate our reward system in a smart and healthy way, I'm going to add that, smart and healthy way, we're able to tell our brain, hey, this is nicer. I like how this feels. Let's do this again. And you can substitute and create a new pattern that serves you better.
And create healthy behaviors.
Exactly. But this is all based in neuroscience. And this is literally what happens in your brain. So one of the important things that we need to understand, that a lot of our behaviors and beliefs are created by the age of 7, and they're created without anybody knowing this is happening. It's just, you could be playing with your toys and somebody yells, you are stupid. And then we associate, having fun with acting stupid, which is kind of interesting because I'm Eastern European. And my mom keeps repeating to me over and over, don't be so happy, don't be so smiley. People will think you're stupid. There's a saying, he's laughing as an idiot to a cheese. There's an assumption in Eastern Europe that if you're joyful and happy and bubbly, you're stupid, because it's impossible to be joyful at a grown-up age because there are problems. Well, and again, that is a cultural thing, and we didn't choose to have that belief. It is implanted in us because of our environment. Culture, environment we were surrounded with, and they're not doing this to hurt us. It just happens. Now, this is great, but when we grow up, that's not an excuse anymore, because as an adult, we get to choose our environment. We get to choose people we surround ourselves with, and we get to choose and prevent if we're aware of them, our odd behaviors that are not serving us.
Sure.
And brain coaching is using that idea as well. It is life coaching partially, because you cannot separate your brain from life,
Sure.
because your brain is to serve you to succeed in life. That's its job. But I think it's absolutely amazing that with the new techniques and the new knowledge, you can speed up the process. This, of course, should not be used for acute, when you're in a state of clinical depression, if you're schizophrenic, or you're having bipolar issues or anything else.
Suicidal ideation, yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Those are things not for brain coaching. This could be a support system to the psychiatry that is helping you function to rewire your brain and start, but there are certain things we cannot do. And it's very important to know your place. And I'm going to say this, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, but I am a very good brain coach trained by one of the best in the nation. And I know my place. I know when I can help you. And I also know when it's time for me to say, hey, you need somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for explaining that. That's an amazing. I love the highway explanation from a small little, tiny little thin thread all the way to this highway that we're riding, that is established by cultural patterns, by tradition belief, by limited belief, right? The things that are instilled in us, the trauma that has been caused to us by maybe unbeknownst parents or people around us. So that's a beautiful explanation. In this whole thing where we can see that we can change our thinking, comes this change your mindset. And of course, that is something that we assist therapists or assist psychiatrists with, getting the patients on a path to, I love it that you say 6 months, because that's a good time frame. That's how I like to work with my clients, from 6 months to a year, to really kind of change their thinking, because 1 week or 1 month will never be enough, right, to help somebody. If it's what I always call, if it's a consultation, yes, right, to give information that you are giving now, that people are being able to process very fast, or in a workshop format, but long term is better.
The processing is one thing. If knowledge was the way to be rich and famous, we would all be rich, famous, and skinny. We all know how to achieve that. It does not mean we're doing it. I mean, show me a person who is rich, famous, and skinny, and happy and joyful. We all read the books, really. We all have, and we all know that we need to move to lose weight, and look at the obesity rates. Now, some people are sick, and this is a result of their illness, but that's not the majority. That's the minority, right? So knowing is actually nothing more than that. Knowing. You need action items that you create grit and behavior. And as we said, neuroplasticity after age of 25 requires you to zoom in on the change you want to make. The
Pay
change
attention and be aware.
Yeah, you need to choose to change.
Yeah.
And that we've worked our whole lives to be the way we are, and we did it automatically. Changing that pattern, rewiring those behaviors, rewiring those automatic reactions takes time, because they're automatic. Now, you first need to recognize them, then you need to catch them. And when you catch them, you need to interrupt them. And when you interrupt them, you need to put in the new behavior. And then you need to keep repeating it long enough to build that highway, right? That's why I know quite a few people that go, oh, I went to therapy 3 times. I'm like, great. I'm happy now that you understand what was happening, but that won't change anything unless you choose to change. And that drive, that is so, so important. And also, anxiety, for example, feeling sad, feeling angry, those are all normal feelings. If somebody's telling you should never feel anxiety, that's not true. That's human experience. Anxiety is only bad when it's preventing you from living your life, from stopping, from making decisions.
Boycotting yourself. Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely. I get angry and upset. Question is, how long do I stay in that place? Right? So the length of time you feel that emotion is important. If me 10 years ago, oh my goodness, girl, that was just something else. When somebody hurt my feelings, I would go over and over and over it in my head for months, not days.
And take it personal as can be. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Now I allow myself up to 24 hours for big events and about 2 hours. And then I flip out of it. It's a skill that I've learned. And imagine you can change how you feel, still feel all the feelings that you need to feel, because we do need anger. We do need frustration. We do need anxiety. Those are actually good things. When you're anxious, you're anticipating, you're nervous. Now, if it's, stopping you from living and you shut down and then you faint and throw up, that's not a good thing. Absolutely. But if you feel a bit of it before a test, that's perfectly normal. When you go on stage and you have stage fright, if it's not paralyzing you to a point where you stop talking on stage, it is also absolutely normal, because we do care. So there is a healthy level of emotions, and there is this that takes our life away, where we keep, self-loathing, saying how stupid we are, what an idiot, blah, blah, blah. The overwhelm that we feel, right? The moment we lump everything together, like all women are, all men are, really all, like all. Yeah. One of my lovely clients, she would say, I don't trust any man. She goes, I have 2 sons and this and this. And then I'm like, oh, really? And do you trust your sons? Well, yeah, they're my sons. Are they men?
They're men.
Yeah. Is it true that you don't trust any men? And we, from all men, went to some men. And that is much easier for your brain to process, because it's not you against the world, it's you against some. And then when we can, take that apart and make it into 3 men that have hurt you, that's very manageable. Yeah. So all of those patterns, yes, they're part of psychology, but they're based in your brain. So for example, procrastination. Prefrontal cortex, frontal dorsal area. That's where your procrastination sleeps. Yeah. And that's where you don't get enough blood and oxygenation and the nutrients. So what can you do about it besides working with a coach or a therapist? Well, one of the exercises, especially for procrastination, is learning how to juggle. 3 balls, 10 minutes a day. It will, within a few months, decrease the level of procrastination, because you will infuse your prefrontal cortex and that area with more nutrients, better blood flow, and oxygenation, because that's
super interesting. I've never heard that before, and I have done shows on procrastination and the answer to it, but that's great. I love that. I absolutely love that. Yes. So it takes, and just to kind of wrap it together, it takes, and I so believe this, I tell my clients all the time, it takes willingness, and you have to be open to accept as is, and to be willing to make changes to where you're at, right? Because we meet people where they're at that point. I am, and it's very important for me to instill some hope, to instill some belief that things actually can be changed, and I like to call that growth. I don't talk about change so much as growth. It's kind of a friendlier word to say, we're never done anyway. We're still growing. I learned a lot today, right? So we're just constantly going into a mode of adding to that knowledge, but it becomes easier when we are acknowledging, accepting, and then applying the skills, as you say, right? We know now what to do. I love the example of anxiety. I call that, there is a deep anxiety that makes you fearful and that makes you stand outside. I always say, go stand outside in Texas, wait for it to rain, right? When we have 4 months of 100-degree heat, why don't we go stand there, watch the grass grow? But that's the anxiety that you can handle. And if you're looking at my anxiety going on stage, or with you, we both met on stage, right? We're just right there. And if you see that, then I call that my exciting anxiety. It makes me feel alive. It makes me come alive. Indeed, it is just all up in the vortex. It just creates that kind of hype and super exciting feel. Absolutely.
You know what? I think this is a great moment. I learned that from Joseph. It's another technique to get rid of the stage fright anxiety. So what you do, first of all, I hope all our listeners know that our brain lies to us. That's one, and it will always prove us right. I don't know if you guys ever did the exercise with imagining what you're eating, how it smells, how it tastes,
Yeah.
and you go through it and you start salivating. Your
Mhm.
brain does not know that there's no food in front of you. It thinks there's food and needs to digest. So we use the same ability of your brain to create what you're imagining. So before you go on stage, of course, take a deep breath. I'm not going to say relax, but take a deep breath, few
Mhm.
deep breaths, close your eyes. And first of all, imagine you're sending out love to every person that is in front of you that you can see. And then imagine in your head that everybody at the end is standing up and giving you applause. And imagine that to a point where you can hear, smell, and feel the applause in you. And that exercise allows you to decrease the level of anxiety because your brain, again, doesn't know reality from something
Yeah.
it's imagined. So,
Yes, makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Tell the listener a little bit about the EMDR technique that you were using. Very, very, very prominent for people, especially with PTSD and deep invested trauma. So explain a little bit about that. I know the listeners probably don't know what it means.
right. So EMDR is a technique that was developed a while back. And for a long time, it was considered a hoax technique that it's not working. We have enough studies and brain scans now to know that it does. What happens is we're using rapid eye movement, and there are two techniques. One, I use elements of EMDR in my work. I've been certified in England, not in the US. So that's why I use elements of it. And while somebody's creating rapid eye movement with the eyeballs and following a finger or a pen, whichever is used,
Mhm.
you're being asked to remember the questions, remember the events, as you're being asked questions. And it has shown that this technique, and the one I use, which is a variation of this, disassociates, which means separates the event from the feeling. So at the end of working on that event, whatever traumatic event it was for you, you still remember it happened, but it doesn't trigger any feelings. It's like the brain knows, oh, and that's going to sound very odd, but I want you to listen to me. Oh, I was assaulted. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
That was not fun, but there's nothing happening in me. I don't start crying. I don't go into shaking. Nothing happens. And that technique allows, in many cases, not all, because no technique works for all, right? But it's worth a try, separates that memory from the attached emotion. And that's also neuroscience. And you can easily process then what happened to you without locking, going into states that are non-resourceful. And it's not saying it didn't happen. It is accepting what happened. And then it's easier to work on not feeling guilty, not being attached, forgiving, or allowing it to go. Because forgiveness is an overrated thing.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's perfectly okay to accept that somebody was mean, cruel, and that's not okay, and move on. It doesn't mean you're going to go, oh, I love you, I forgive you, I know you didn't mean to. Sometimes that is not necessary. Sometimes it is enough to accept that somebody was cruel to you, they hurt you, and you are able to move on. So
Yeah.
I absolutely love EMDR. I don't use it very often because it has to be extremely heightened emotion. Otherwise, it's just loss of technique. There's no point. Young lady, well, not young, well, young lady, 64.
Yeah.
I was coaching her a few days ago, and she said, Dominika, I had first good night's sleep in years.
Wow.
And it's not a promise that it's going to work on everybody. But if you have a chance, go and try. Neurofeedback is another one of those that it's worth trying if you went through trauma. Absolutely. If you have problems with memory, please go and get your hyperbaric oxygenating chambers, 40 sessions. It changes how your brain functions. It helps your brain to be in a better state. I mean, there's so many things we can try before going on medication. I have a friend after, and she was not my client. She just called me, Dominika, help, I'm losing my memory. So we created a regimen. One of the most important things for your brain to be healthy, no matter your age, is learning languages and doing bilateral exercises. One of them is pickleball and table tennis. So doing that and learning foreign languages 10 minutes a day prevents your brain from deterioration. If you add oxygenation to that and breathing techniques, which change the brain waves, it helps your brain to regenerate. We added some Dr. Amen supplements, and she does those exercises. And it turned out that it worked. And she's like, I'm back to me. I can remember where I put my keys. I can remember, the things that I started to forget. And it's not her fault, because most doctors, for some unknown reason, when you have, you hit your head, you fall off the stairs, they go, oh, you're good, you can go home. No, you're not good. Your brain inside is like this buttery substance, like a jello. And inside your skull, there are ridges. So anytime you hit it, it indents into your brain.
It gets a good bounce, yes.
So if that happens more than once, or even once, and it's a strong hit, your brain will be challenged. Now, yes, it can regenerate on its own, but sometimes it doesn't. And those hits build up. And then out of the blue, somebody's 45, 50 hormonal changes happen and personality changes occur. And that was what was happening to NFL players, which Dr. Amen brought in the study. That's why they have changed the helmets, because of so many personality changes. After they finished NFL, they started drinking, doing drugs, they became aggressive, and they're not bad people. They were never bad people. And then because your brain was damaged, and if you address that right afterwards, do not dismiss it. You will be doing way better in a few years. And sometimes when those changes occur, we forget about the brain trauma we've experienced. It doesn't have to be a TBI where they cut off half of your brain.
Yeah.
It can be, you falling off the ladder, you hitting your head, hitting the ball with your head, falling off a bike and hitting the side. And when you faint, that's guaranteed you have brain trauma. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that. And you brought so much content into something that's really important right now, because with the state of mental health, right, in the world, but also with us recognizing this. I mean, you probably, and especially I think we Europeans kind of delve into that a little deeper. It's like the get over it and just move on generation, right? So I had to learn myself to be understanding of the fact that we all, including myself, have a lot of big T's and small T's, and they were there, and they were at some point maybe not worked on, processed, or we just didn't know what to do with it. So there's so much more information. EMDR, I think I've seen tremendous results with that when I was working with people in addiction, and especially people veterans, PTSD, trauma, and combat, right? Especially people that are coming back from the field. So there was great research there, and great facts. I've seen the works. So to be able to dissociate from the event at some point, even with external triggers that might come in all forms and shapes, and at some point you say, yes, I was assaulted, but I don't have to go on my back anymore and drink a bottle of water with all fours up, right? Because I don't feel anything anymore. And it's very important that people know that we can get there. I have a few more questions. How did your beautiful self get into, of course, I can say you were a life coach all your life because you were doing HR, you have a huge corporate, a huge international background working with people of all levels. So that makes you knowledgeable of the humankind, right? How did you get into this last, I don't know if it's the last stage, but this wonderful stage of your career?
So my role was kind of interesting because in Europe, I was working with the president of Poland. I was working with the European Union. I was doing amazing things. I run my own company. I was a life coach and a career coach. And I was helping people, but I didn't feel like I'm changing the world. I have a big internal need of serving people. And at one point I went, okay, I'm serving people and I'm doing great financially and I'm miserable beyond limits. I would come home and cry every night. I got divorced. I had my twins. I was a single mom. I was exhausted. Anything that you can imagine happened to me, including death of my son, who was 16 months old. I mean, all the possible traumatic experiences a woman can experience, I checked them all. And I was miserable because I didn't have the tools. And I started with therapy. That didn't work really. Then I went to coaching, and that started working because coaching focuses on here and now, not on the past. What can we do now to change and make your life better? And I was going through my own development, and I'm epileptic, which brain is always a big part of my life because that's what creates the seizures, right? And I have the type of epilepsy that without medication cannot be managed, and there's no operation I can do. So I am kind of stuck with it, and I have to learn to manage. And me refusing to admit that I'm epileptic created even more seizures because I did not live brain healthy lifestyle. And then after the trainings with Tony Robbins and everything else, Joseph McClendon III and Dr. Amen created a brain revolution program, which was a certification in neuro encoding and brain coaching. And I fell in love with it because, first of all, I finally had science behind why something is working, why something is not working. And there were research after research that was peer reviewed. It wasn't just people saying, oh, it just works. I am at heart a person who loves science, and I want to understand why. Now, I've learned not to ask that question when it comes to my life, but when I work with my clients, I want to know that what I'm doing, there is a reason why it's working. It's not just me saying, oh, that's my experience. It worked for me. It worked for me. And there's like plenty of studies that prove that, this works. And it was a very intense course. Some of us did not graduate. Some of us did. And to be honest, for the last 3 years, both of the gentlemen, Joseph McClendon III and Dr. Amen, have been putting us on developmental calls every week.
Oh, wow.
I have not stopped learning since I started the certification. The amount of little things that we keep learning, and we get access to phenomenal teachers. We were trained not only by Joseph, but also by the head coach for John C. Maxwell team, their head coach, and Dr. Amen himself and his wife Tana, who has enormous knowledge about food and how food supports us.
Good health. Yeah.
Gut health, yes. So those things do work together. And obviously, I'm not an expert on nutrition. So if somebody needs high level of knowledge of nutrition, I will send you to a great nutritionist. You cannot be great at everything, and I fully acknowledge that there are things that this is going to be person, let's work together on yours. Sometimes I send you to a doctor because I see that everything is not the way it's supposed to be, but I'm not a doctor. So you need a doctor who is, aware of how your blood work is supposed to look like, and then come back to me and let's work together. And I fell in love because with this knowledge, I'm changing the world. I'm taking away the stigma from mental health and putting it on brain health. I'm able to cut down the time that people stay in therapy. And the more happy people we have, the more gratitude in the world, the more satisfied people are with their lives, the more positive reinforcement goes down the line. People offer to other people what they have. And if they don't get triggered, there's less. Even if somebody's triggered and you don't get triggered, there's no quarrel, there's no tension, because you are able to love on them and understand them and set boundaries. Please. It's like a lot of people go, oh, I love everybody. Do you set boundaries? Because love has to do with boundaries, right? You cannot be, oh, they're hitting me and I love you, you're so amazing. No. I mean, I love you, and I do not agree to this behavior.
I do not allow that anymore. Yeah.
So I love the program, and now I had the privilege to run trainings for new neuro encoding coaches for Joseph McClendon in his institute. That was an honor, to guide 10 people that were absolutely going to be phenomenal, going to be changing the world. And I still have classes with Dr. Amen and support calls there with amazing people at Dr. Amen. So the beauty of it is that I can pick up a phone if I don't know something, and I have a whole range of support that will say, this is where you need to send them, this is where you need to go.
Mm.
You can handle this, or this would be better if it was handled by whomever else. And I think that humility allows me to serve my clients the best.
Absolutely. And I love it too. And I love to wrap it up with that, because I believe every coach needs a coach, and that we are open to constant growth and
I
constant.
have two of them.
I have two of them. I have two of them. I am very, very inspired by your wonderful story. I want to hear more. I am now all, I just want to read into this and then follow you. I will follow you everywhere. Tell me, beautiful Dominika, where we can find you and how to reach out to you, and what is the best way to get in touch with you.
Well, I have the privilege of having the same handles everywhere. So if you go on LinkedIn, you'll find me by Dominika Staniewicz. That's my public profile, but there's also Your Brain Coach D profile on LinkedIn. There's a page on Facebook, Your Brain Coach D. There's Instagram handle, Your Brain Coach D. So those are all the same ones. There's a YouTube channel, Your Brain Coach D. And my email is yourbraincoachd@gmail.com. And the website is yourbraincoachd.com.
I love it. Thank you so much, my brain coach D. I am so glad we met. I'm so glad to have you on the show today. Super grateful for you jumping in this week. I hope to see everybody on next episode. A big applause to my beautiful guest today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining Allianz Joy. I will see you next week at the same time, same place. And just make it a wonderful week, as I always say. It's up to you. Bye-bye until next time.